Happy video day, guys, and happy Make Up Your Mind day. So today we're going to be doing another Make Up Your Mind on another brand new release. So this one that we're going to be talking about today is actually from Marc Jacobs, and I was pretty excited when I saw Trend Mood released the images of this new palette. I love the color story. This is like a color story that I can totally get on board with. It's actually retailing for $49.50, which is a very typical price point for Marc Jacobs. They say it's a limited gold edition. I do not know 100% if that means that the packaging is going to be limited edition and this palette is actually going to be permanent. I'm going to leave a pin down below if I figure that out, or if you guys know the answer to that question, leave it down below, because Marc Jacobs has done this in the past, that they say that it's a limited edition, but it's just the packaging. So I'm not 100% sure if that's the case with this one. So if you guys are new to Make Up Your Mind, just really quickly, let me just explain that what we're doing in this video is I search through my collection and I try to find similar tones in my collection to a brand new release in order for me to decide whether the palette is worth it for me to pick up or not. I'm not looking for dupes here. I'm just looking for things that are similar to see if I can kind of create a color story, see the color story, see if I like the color story, and then decide for myself whether I want to add this to my collection or if I just think that I can just use the colors that are in my collection and not go and pay for another one. So that's basically what I do in this video, and I always tell you guys to try this at home as well to see what you guys have in your collection. Sometimes you guys have more similar palettes in your collection than I even do. So this palette is actually called the Marc Jacobs Eye-Conic Multi-Finish Eyeshadow Palette. The color is Extravagance. It's a limited edition gold. And if you guys participated in this week's Insta challenge, then this is the photo that I posted on Instagram, and these are some of the names that actually guessed that this is going to be the Marc Jacobs Extravagance palette. So you guys got it right. If you guys want to participate in my next Insta challenge, then don't forget to follow me over on Instagram at Christina Brooke Beauty, and just wait for me to post the swatches, next palette that I'm trying to mimic, and then just tell me which one you think it is and you can get featured in my next video. I will tell you guys, as much as I love the color story of this palette, because I really do, I think it's really pretty, and it's kind of like within my love of palette colorations, I will say that I was able to kind of mimic it pretty decent. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys my swatches. Now the swatches that I'm using right now to compare it to are actually the ones from Morgan Turner's video, which if you guys haven't seen her video, she actually reviewed this palette. I'm going to go ahead and leave her video down below because I'm using her swatches. This palette, for some reason, they didn't release swatches of it, so I've been looking kind of everywhere. What I did was I used her swatches. I also used the image of the palette, and I read the description of the colors to kind of mimic this as best as I could. Looking at the swatches and looking at the color story within the actual palette, I feel like I was able to do something that's pretty close. Obviously, they're not going to be exact because this isn't a dupes video, but it's going to be pretty close. And once you apply these things on your lids and you blend them out, you kind of will probably get a very similar look. So for this, I actually used a few different palettes. I could have stuck to like one or two, but just because there was some other colors that I was like, I need to add this, I added some extra ones. So the palettes that I used for this were actually from Charlotte Tilbury. It's the Starry Eyes to Hypnotize. I actually used a lot of colors from the Natasha Denona Gold palette, which is one of my babies. I grabbed one color from the Marc Jacobs Leopard Frost palette because I was going to use it from the gold palette, but there was a color even closer in this palette. So this one is one of the ones that maybe I didn't really need to add this palette, but I just really wanted to. So now this one was the last one, and I only needed one color that I couldn't find in any of the other palettes, and I had to get it from the Safari from Natasha Denona. So those are the four palettes that I was able to create this color story with, and let's go ahead and let's quickly go over it. And let's start off with the first color. So the first color is not revolutionary. It is black, and I'm sure it's going to be a pretty black. I think they said it was like a satin formula. I really love the Charlotte Tilbury black, and I took it from Starry Eyes to Hypnotize. This black is amazing, and you know, as long as the formula of a black is good, I really just don't care. Like, I would probably just stick to this black. I don't need another black in my collection. It would just have to be like the most amazing black in the entire universe for me to want to add it, because I already have a few palettes with blacks in them. So that color is not going to make me buy it. We've got 6 colors. One of them is not going to make me buy it, so we've got 5 left. So the next color is one that I could have gotten from the gold palette, like I told you guys, but I ended up looking in the Leopard Frost from Marc Jacobs, and I remember that there was this gorgeous color right here. It's kind of like a bronze, it's kind of like a brownish bronze color, and I don't know, when I swatched it, it just reminded me so much of the color that I see inside of the pan, and also the color that I saw inside the swatches, that I was like, is this similar? It may be a little bit lighter, like the original one might be a little bit lighter, and if it is, inside of the Natasha Denona Gold palette, there is this pretty color right here, which is actually called Yaris, which is not the color that you guys are going to see in my swatches, but that one's just a tad bit lighter. But like, you guys can even tell, do you see how these two swatched on my hand right now? One's a little bit deeper, one's a little bit lighter, but once you put this on your lids, the difference is going to be so minimal that you may not be actually able to tell the difference. You know what I mean? So these colors are not the same. They're not the same. I feel like it could be in between. It could be in between either one of these. It's close to the color inside Leopard Frost. That's what I think. And if it is, I like that color a lot, and I will tell you that I love the Leopard Frost color story, which if you guys kind of look at it, it kind of reminds me a little bit of this new palette, but the Leopard Frost color story is so gorgeous, but I tend to forget to use that palette. That's the truth. Color is the selling color for me. This is the color that I think is so gorgeous in this palette because it's different, because not everybody's releasing green, and I found it, and I remembered seeing this color somewhere, and I can't even put my foot on it. I was like, what palette had that color? I know I've been using that color. And it was from Starry Eyes to Hypnotize. So this gorgeous color right here, this reminds me of the color. It's actually inside of Dream Glow. This formula from Charlotte Tilbury is just like insanely gorgeous. This looks like a very similar color. This is a very nice green. If this color is the same, this is a nice green. And I will tell you, so far, these first 3 colors are so gorgeous. Like, honestly, the color story right there, I'm just like, I really like that color story. It's really, really, really pretty. Now, the next color, I was actually pretty shocked because I have the gold palette. I have a lot of gold in my collection, but I do feel like I was having a hard time finding this particular shade of gold. And I've had this happen to me a couple of times with this particular shade of gold, because a few palettes have come out with a color very similar to this one, and I haven't been able to find it spot on. But what I had to do was I jumped into Natasha Denona's gold palette, and this color down here called Brass, it almost looks a little bit greenish on screen, but it's really more gold. You see it better in the swatch than you do inside the pan. It gives me a more brass color, but because I feel like it goes a little bit more gold, I'm gonna add a little bit of this color called Arumium or something like that. And when you mix them both together, you start to get a color that goes a little bit brass, but more gold, not brass, more copper. So I do feel like those two together create that color. Now that being said, I like that color. Like, I really, really like that color. I'm like really liking that color. So far this is not going too good for me because the first 4 tones to me are really gorgeous. Now, they work very good together as well. So that's really important sometimes when you buy palettes. Unless you're somebody who likes to use add-ons a lot, if you're buying one palette that you just want to kind of use all the colors together, it's important that they all kind of jive, you know what I mean? Or they jive with certain ones, you know? But this one so far, the first 4 tones, love them. So it has really 2 mattes, and they're calling one a satin. But the 2 mattes are pretty nice, and we're gonna get there too. Okay, so the next color I also had to mix a little bit from the gold palette, and I decided to stay to the gold palette because I was like, why add more when this palette has all those golds and bronzes? So what I ended up doing was grabbing this color called Yaris right here, which I showed you guys previously, but it's too brown. So I had to grab a little bit of this color right here called Alchemist, which goes a little bit more goldy. And when they mix together, you kind of get that like light bronzish tone. I don't know if that's a good description of it, but it reminds me a lot of what I'm seeing inside of the swatches and also in the pan. Now this is one that could be a little bit tricky because it could be a little bit lighter, and I'm not 100% sure like on the dot, but already looking at this color story, I don't feel like I really need to be 100% on the dot because I feel like this color family, whether it be a little bit lighter or a little bit darker, goes very good with the color story, if you understand what I'm saying. So the next one is one that I just think is so beautiful. It's a very neutral color, but this is a really good blending shade. Now the tone that I see inside of the Marc Jacobs looks like it will appear pretty nice on my skin tone because it reminds me a lot of the color inside of the gold palette called Teak. So I feel like this is going to be a similar tone, even though I think Teak might be a little bit browner, and I think the one that's inside the Marc Jacobs is going to be a little bit lighter than this one. But they both are pretty similar once blended out and everything. I think they're going to do a very similar idea, and I really like that color. So we're not off to a good start when it comes to saving money, because I do feel like I'm loving this palette so far. The last color, I will tell you, I think for me personally might have been a throwaway color because it's just kind of like a light beige. Now these colors, sometimes they just don't do enough for me. I'm not 100% sure how beige tone this is going to be, but when I was looking at the swatch and I was also looking at the pan, I don't think it's that white. So I'm gonna just go with this color inside of Safari called Aria. It has a little bit more of a beige undertone, and when you swatch it, it almost looks skin color, but it has a little bit of like a white base to it, so you do see it, but it is a little bit more skin colored. That's what I'm thinking is happening in this palette. So that last color to me is, it's not needed. I personally don't do the whole light all over the lid and then start an eye look. I would use that actually as a actual color, and sometimes those colors just don't do too much for me, but it just depends on how you like to apply your makeup. So really the last color to me is kind of like, okay, it's like whatever. It's like not the end of the world, but it's not something that's gonna make me buy the palette, but the rest of the colors are. This palette right now, guys, I'm loving it, and I'm loving it for the fall. So I think I'm gonna make up my mind, guys, and I think I'm gonna purchase this one. I really do. I think I'm going to actually buy this palette because I do like it. I think it's really pretty, and I feel like this is a kind of color story that I would actually use. I love this color story. I think it's gorgeous. It's not boring. It's just so cool. Like, I feel like it's a very good go-to palette, and it's kind of those colors that I would love to use, like love. Yeah, I think I'm gonna buy this palette. I think I'm gonna buy this palette. So anyways, guys, I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. Let me know if you guys have a palette that's closer in your collection. I would love to know what you guys have to say down below, but I love this color story. I mean, I don't know, it's just so cute to me, and that's why I really like it. Probably don't need it because I did find a lot of tones, but I think I'm going to buy it. So anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to leave me those comments down below. Hit that subscribe button if you have not already, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.